So in a school situation for children, whether it's in a classroom or in therapy, would you do that as just part of a relaxing mode before you do an activity, or to if there's some stress involved visibly that you could tell that
both? And actually, I used Wave Hello last month or 2 months ago. I was doing a demo class at a preschool program for homeless children, and as you can imagine, there was a lot of stress in that particular program, which isn't necessarily so. I've been in 4 different classrooms, and this one happened to be extremely stressful, partly because the teachers were more stressed. You know, you find that really the adults can kind of create the atmosphere. If we get out of fear paralysis, the kids do a lot better. If we don't, they never do. So this was a situation of extreme stress. I just walked in and I hadn't even started setting up yet, and I was barely in the room, and 2 kids were literally hitting each other and kicking each other, and they were being pulled apart. And it was circle time. You know, I was there to do circle time. and then all the children are, and talk about fear paralysis, they were like this. And the other ones are. And so I just started right in. I started this. Getting a rhythm going is really, really good. It mimics the a lot of rhythmic movements in the body. Heartbeat is like this. The cerebellum sets up these oscillatory patterns, which are very regular, which process all of our thoughts and movements. So I think it really you sort of create a big cerebellum in the room when you do this. And then I just started doing Wave Hello. Watch your fingers go. You know, looking at all the children. Eye contact is really good. Hold on a second. And within 30 seconds, all of the children were doing Wave Hello. The 2 that had been fighting were just looking at me. But the whole atmosphere in the room went. It was fine. We had class. There was no problem. The problem went away. You know? And this is the amazing thing about reflex integration, particularly with young children, because young children are so much more evolved than we are in terms of being able to let go of their issues. You know, if it's not now, it's not happening, we're good. Let's have music class. There was absolutely no problem until later. When something, you know, it was a stressful class, and there was something else came up. But it wasn't because of what had just happened. You know, that was gone. And that's a really important thing to realize, is that we're supposed to forget trauma. We have lots of hormones that help us forget trauma. You know, when you run away from a saber-toothed tiger and just make it up a tree and you're going, you know, you don't want to remember that. I mean, many of us have had babies, and, you know, how many of us really remember how much it hurt? You know, you forget on purpose, or else you'd never do it again. You know, it's just the way it is. And children understand that. They let it go. And so if when you have, so what you do is this: recognize, okay, there's fear, everybody's in fear paralysis. Those 2 kids are in Moro, which I'll talk about in a moment. And the same kind of things, holding feet, doing Wave Hello, can work for Moro too. And so what I did was redirect that energy in a positive way. So the idea is, when you see a reflex being active, you don't counter it, okay? You don't try and do something else. You go into the trauma because that's where the person is. There is no part of them that is not in trauma, okay? When a reflex is that active, nothing's happening anywhere else. You pretend it's not happening. All you're doing is creating more stress. And if someone is really reactive, like crazy, if you talk to them in a very calm voice, you're just they're nowhere. They aren't anywhere where they can process that calm, because it's not where they are. You have to start where they are and take that movement and redirect it in a positive direction, and then it will release. Yes?
I was just asking, when you go along, if you can talk about the child's response or reaction to touch.
Yes.
I was going to ask when these reflexes are active.
Okay, there is a touch reflex The touch reflex comes in very early. It's even before fear paralysis. It's 1 week in utero. And what the touch reflex is when the little fetus brushes against the uterine wall, the first impulse is to recoil. Okay, and after about a week of doing that, it starts to say, oh, I guess this is mom. And it starts to like that. I mean, this is when it's just this little cluster of cells. It doesn't even look human. It's doing that. So when there's an active touch reflex, that's recoiling from touch is very early. So it can be very difficult to work with because it is so early. And you often find it when there's been, chemical problems, if the mother has, been medicated or has addictions or, that kind of thing. Often or is just freaked out enough that it's not safe at all. So, so sensitivity to touch, I don't start there. I always start with fear paralysis. Okay, I've just found that 50% of my work is fear paralysis, and it's 98% of the first appointments I have with any child or adult is releasing fear paralysis, because we're all frozen somewhere. There's some place in all of us that may just go, and that's still there. And until that releases, nothing else is going to completely work. What I've found is if you don't get to the fear paralysis place in the child or the adult, if you happen to be a practitioner, if that's still active, what you'll find is that the healing will go a certain amount, or the behavior will be modified a certain amount, or they'll learn a certain amount, and suddenly you get to this place where either you stop making progress, or that's fixed, but something pops up over here. Oh, now they've got an allergy. Oh, now they're afraid of the dark. Oh, now, And what's really happening, I think, is that the back brain is protecting that response. Because basically what happens is anytime there is a severe trauma, and severe trauma can be something that we wouldn't necessarily think was severe. But if the brain believes it is, it is. It's like if you're in school and someone sets off the fire alarm and everybody knows it's a mistake, you still have to have everyone evacuate. The fire department still has to come, even if you can't call the fire department and say, oh, it was just a mistake. They are bound by law to come. That's what happens when you set off the fire alarm. That's the way our survival systems work. If the fire alarm gets set off, we have to go through the whole amygdala. And so what happens is that we survive. When you're in fear paralysis or Moro, any of these, survival responses, there's a part of you that thinks, I might not make it through this. So once you do make it through it, say, wow, that worked. I better do it again. So whatever you did to survive is the thing you do again. And you do it again and again and again. It becomes your default. And that gets protected zealously by the system. And so that's why you get these weird repetitive behaviors. Like, why is this kid, I've done so much work with this kid, we've helped, it's done some, why do they keep doing this crazy thing over and over again? Why do they keep biting on their sleeves? Or why do they keep hitting Johnny? Or because at some point, the back brain decided that this is what worked to keep me alive, and so I'm going to do it. And as one of my colleagues here, Dr. Krebs, says, quality of life is not my issue. It doesn't have anything to do with what makes you happy. It doesn't have anything to do with what makes you smart or anything. All it has to do with is, did I make it? And so I think what happens, this is my hypothesis, but it seems to work out, at least in my life and in my practice, that when you get to this place where you've been making progress, and then you're about 80% of the way, or maybe even 98% of the way, and then suddenly these, smoke screens come out. Look at fear paralysis. Look at the reflex. There's an active reflex there that is being protected because the system believes that change is death. If anything changes, even for the better, it doesn't know from better. It doesn't know that. It knows that I kept you alive by freezing, and so it doesn't matter if this is a board meeting and the president of the board is waiting for you to deliver your speech. This is what worked when you were 3 years old and, you know, your father was drinking and you hid under the table. It worked then, it's going to work now too, you know, because you're that scared. So unless you work with this aspect, you get frustrated. And then what happens is people start thinking it's the child's fault. You know, why can't they get it together? This must just be bad behavior, or if it's yourself, you think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just get over it? And then you start beating on yourself, and this is also distraction. The back brain's happy. You're getting distracted from getting to that reflexive place. And so, but really, the reflexes are not that hard to integrate. Okay?